Well, a fascinating chess match of epic proportions is being played out with the latest move coming Thursday morning. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ari Al-Hawani here in Las Vegas. Of course, we are here for UFC 197, but safe to say that the entire MMA world is not focused on the return of Jon Jones. As amazing as that sounds, they are focused on the latest saga between Conor McGregor and the UFC. That, of course, is Luke Thomas of MMA Fighting.com. That, of course, is Sean al-Shatti, also of MMA Fighting.com. And guys, we have a lot to discuss here. Quickly, let me recap where we're at right now. Tuesday morning, of course, actually late Tuesday afternoon, Conor McGregor puts out a tweet saying that he has retired, but nothing more. Later that day, Dana White goes on SportsCenter and says that Conor McGregor has been pulled from UFC 200. On Wednesday, not much news came out other than Dana White doing some media and essentially sort of doubling down on his original statement, but kind of leaving the door open for a potential return at UFC 200 for Conor McGregor. We did not hear from Conor himself. But late Thursday morning, Conor McGregor went to Facebook and posted a very lengthy and heartfelt statement about his stance as to why he did not want to come to Las Vegas to promote UFC 200 this week. All right, you read the statement. You've digested it. What do you make of it?
Brilliant is my first word that comes to mind. A little bit scattered, heartfelt, certainly sincere, genuine. Look, I think most fans, actually, no, I don't want to speak for fans. For me, when I read it, I was like, these claims are entirely reasonable, right? These are things that a superstar who is profoundly focused on regaining success. You know, every time he's had a setback, be it ACL or an injury, since he's had that career reformation, getting back on the horse in the most emphatic of ways is what drives this guy. And you can see that bleeds through the lettering, right? So that was my first takeaway. But I know I was sort of reacting with some fans online and some other journalists, and they were like, well, this is special treatment. Newsflash, we live in a world where special people get special treatment. That is just how it goes. Good-looking people get treated better. People who are rich get treated better. People who are more celebrated, who are better athletes. It's not necessarily fair, but in this particular case, I really don't quite understand what is so deeply, profoundly objectionable about what McGregor is asking, given what he contributed, other than it challenges that line in the sand of, is any fighter, including Conor McGregor, are they really bigger than the UFC? I guess the UFC does not think so. Wow.
So, Sean, the ball is now back in the UFC's court. It's a fascinating, like I said, a chess match, a tennis match. It keeps going back and forth. Now it's on them. What do you think they're going to do here? Because everyone's waiting to see, will they set a precedent? And a lot of people they're talking about the Nate Diaz situation prior to 137, but it's really not like that because Nick kind of just didn't show up and didn't give them any notice. Conor is giving them notice. There's been a back and forth for a week. So what do you think they're going to do now?
And it's not as even if he didn't just give a notice. He even offered, I will do the one press conference in New York. And with him, one press conference is really all you need. You don't need this protracted media tour. And, I think the most telling part of what his statement was, we were going to spend $10 million in this promotion. With one tweet, I tripled what this is worth. I mean, he's basically right? Like, how much have we talked? The top 2 pound-for-pound fighters in the world are fighting on Saturday. No one is talking about that. Within a span of 3 days with one tweet, he has done so much more to promote UFC 200 than any press conference could. It seems like we've gotten the UFC's response too, right? Like there was a report on TMZ where they basically said Conor is officially out. It seems like the UFC has drawn that line in the sand.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. That report on TMZ is I don't know what to make of it.
It's the Twilight Zone. It's the Twilight Zone.
They're saying that they're going to fly his gym from Iceland and set it up the exact same way here in Las Vegas, do everything for him, that, $10 million person, all this stuff. So it seems like Sean said, that's the message, even though it's from sources. Do you think that the UFC is really going to shoot themselves in the foot here? This fight is infinitely bigger than it was 3 days ago and cancel the whole thing.
I think they will. I think they will do that kind of thing. I think these are the UFC's tough customers, man. They don't. I mentioned this before. They play for keeps around here, and it doesn't matter as long as you're challenging their institutional legitimacy and where the pecking order is. They will fight tooth and nail to preserve that order. You can never imagine Bob Arum doing this with Manny Pacquiao. We were talking this off camera. Someone raised an interesting point to me, which I thought was kind of noteworthy, and I forget who, so please forgive me for not crediting them. But they said, Ronda was complaining of media outlet fatigue. and now you have Conor doing it as well. There's a real open question about how much the UFC is burdening their superstars with the lion's share of media obligations that they have to fulfill. It seems to me, to your point, you get one Conor McGregor press conference in New York with all those other cast of characters. You can feast for months on this. And he'll do other press too, I'm sure, along the way. So for me, it's penny wise, pound foolish. But again, I don't run the UFC. So,
Sean, it was disappointing to see how many fighters publicly were campaigning for his spot, using Twitter to not back their guy or their colleague or their fellow fighter, if you will, but to say, hey, Dana White, put me in there for 1/10 of his price. Another example as to why a union association of sorts is very far away. However, you have been scouring the internet this morning, and the tune seems to be changing, has it not?
It absolutely has, and I think that's one of the more interesting parts of the aftermath of this, statement on Thursday is the public pendulum from the fighters has swung completely in the 180 direction the other way. On Tuesday, everyone, like you said, they were celebrating almost this kind of UFC exerting their control over Conor. Now, once he released that statement, it seemed like the fighters really rallied behind what he said. It's a very interesting switch, and you get the feeling that there's a lot more at stake here, that all of these guys are really watching the situation closely to see what kind of precedents are going to be set moving forward.
And the forgotten figure in this whole story is Nate Diaz. No one's really talking about him. He has not come out and publicly commented on this. Do you think if Nate says, I'm only fighting Conor next, give me the fight, that's the one I signed on the dotted line for, that's the one he signed for, that the UFC could then be pressured even more to make this fight happen?
Yeah, I don't know, but he's really rallying for Conor's interest. I don't think the Diaz brothers are built that way. I think the Diaz brothers are built like, here's what I want, here's what I know I want, here's my plan to get it. Either this will happen or it won't, and if it won't, peace out, happy 420. That's sort of right. That's sort of their modus operandi. I don't necessarily think that, but I think to your point, it's a great one because when it first came out that Conor was like, oh well, I don't want to do this. Everyone's like, Conor's a diva. And he kind of is a little bit, right? But he's got a right to be. But when he made it about, man, I lost a fight. And I lost a fight because I wasn't doing the things I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't training the right way. I got lost in this. I think every fighter out there, especially when they're like cutting weight on fight week, they don't like talking to us. They don't like doing any of these things. And that's a thing writ large. And then when you marry that with his accomplishments financially and his contributions, I think a lot of fighters were like, that seems quite reasonable. And I think it is. I really absolutely think it is.
And again, important to note that this is a guy who, prior to UFC 189, flew from Las Vegas to Bristol, Connecticut, to New York City, back to Las Vegas on 48 hours' notice while there were rumors swirling that Jose Aldo was out of the fight. He did this as he's essentially cutting weight. He's always been game to do promotion. This time, he hasn't. Let me ask you this. If you're Nate Diaz and you read that statement, do you say to yourself, this is a panicked fighter? This is a guy who's worried so much about me that he's not willing to go and do this sort of thing? Because in the past, he has been.
I mean, I could see how Nate could take it that way. Although I think also Conor opens up a broader conversation of, he says he doesn't need to do the Tim and Susie morning show. I think that's an interesting question to ask. How much does that actually provide in terms of promotional material? Those type of morning shows where they have these guys doing it one after the other with these hosts that don't know anything about MMA. How much does that actually bring to the promotion? I think there's a very good question to ask there about quality over quantity in terms of those kind of appearances, because you can't suck. Like, people make fun of it and say, oh my God, your life's so hard, you're doing media. It's hard to do this stuff, man. If you're doing this from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., one after the other, that is difficult thing.
It is draining on the mind. Yesterday, I did 14 radio interviews, and I was thinking to myself, I was thinking to myself, I don't know how these guys do it. I really felt for the first time that this is a mentally draining thing to talk about the same thing over and over and over again. Conor McGregor has to do this more so than anyone. So it's a fascinating story that is playing out in front of our eyes here. It keeps going back and forth, and it's developing as we speak. Remember, tomorrow here in Las Vegas, the UFC is putting on a UFC 200 press conference. Those poor fighters are going to be sitting there, and no one is going to want to ask them a question. Let us ask them. Let me ask you this, Luke. Let's end on this, okay? Prediction, just for the record. Does this fight happen July 9th?
I don't think so.
Wow.
I think both of these guys are pretty determined at this point. And how do you, if you're at the UFC, you're definitely not walking this back. We've already seen that with the TMZ thing that you alluded to. If you're Conor McGregor, are you really going to walk this back at this point? You've publicly declared what you're comfortable with, what the parameters are of the arrangement that you want to have. All of a sudden to just balk at that because they leaned on you, I don't think so. I think he'll just end up walking away, and then I mean he'll fight again in 2016, if not for sure 2017. So this is not a retirement thing, and I'm glad he clarified that too, by the way.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I think the UFC, in order to preserve the order of things, they will cut off their nose to spite their face.
And what a shame that would be. You cannot say that there's a precedent being set here if they relent, because very few people have had the power that Conor McGregor has. It's not like Joe Schmo fighter can do this sort of thing or say this sort of thing because they're not being asked to do this sort of thing in the past. Yeah. Your final prediction, do you think the fight happens?
Incredibly, I don't. I mean, it's stunning to say that, right? Yeah. Like, he's the biggest star. You're taking away how many millions of dollars and how many pay-per-views if you take him out of that. It seems like that's the course they're set on, but it really is cutting your nose off to spite your face, like he said.
Amazingly, we are actually here at the MGM, but if you look just a little bit over there, the brand spanking new T-Mobile Arena is just sitting there. That is the site of UFC 200. Do you see it?
Yeah.
It's right over there. That is the site of UFC 200, and amazingly right now, the UFC is facing a UFC 200 card at that new arena without their two biggest stars. Ronda Rousey will not be competing, and now it appears, at least right this moment, Conor McGregor is not a part of that card as well. Shocking stuff. Here's the schedule for today. In about 2 hours, it's the UFC 197 Ultimate Media Day. John Jones, Zovin St. Preux, Henry Cejudo, Demetrius Johnson, and many others will be there. We'll be talking to them, so stick around for that coverage. After that, we'll be taping an on-the-road edition of the MMA Beat, so plenty more to discuss. Who knows what else will happen between now and then, so do not go anywhere. We don't know when the stuff will come out, but please, trust me, the videos will be rolling out. For now, we say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you very soon.